Hello and welcome to the Genuine Learning Blog. My name is Melissa Galasso, and today we're going to talk about a pretty hot topic for this summer, which is FASB's invitation to comment regarding their agenda consultation. So FASB has been working on this for some time as a member of the Not-for-Profit Advisory Committee. At our meeting in March, we focused a lot on what we thought from a nonprofit perspective would be useful for FASB to consider for their agenda. And so they've already done some of their initial feedback and going out and getting some initial conversations, but now they're opening it to the general public looking for information on what should come next. What should FASB be focused on? So this was issued on June 24th, and it basically is a pretty long period. It's not due until September 22nd. And really, they're trying to figure out what should come next. Obviously, they have a new chair. He started July 1, and so of 2020 during COVID. So as you can only imagine, starting up during a COVID period is one of those probably more trying experiences. So he's been here for about a year, and he's trying to figure out what should we be focused on. And so he, as well as the big three being really at this point ready to be implemented, revenue recognition leases and the financial instruments projects, and those post-implementation reviews that they're working on. How did it go at RevRec? How did it go at leases? What can we do? Again, they most recently issued a brand new ASU addressing some changes for leases related to implementation issues. So they've been working on these projects. They finally have gotten them all out the door. They have other things that they're working on, but their goal is to get pretty broad feedback in terms of stakeholders about what should be the future of their standard setting agenda. What's next? Where should they prioritize? What is important to various groups, so that they can think about this. Now, I have heard many people say, well, why don't we just take a break? Unfortunately, I don't think that's what's going to happen, but we can tailor the agenda to what we're looking for. So there are several different questions for respondents. They want to know whether the topics that are described, again, they already did feedback. They already went and discussed what other groups, advisory committees thought would be important. Does the general public agree with these advisory groups? The items that were identified, are these really the areas that they should be focusing on? How would we prioritize each topic? Where would we want to focus first? What are potential solutions? What would we like to see the outcome? Because again, a lot of these are pre-research, pre any information. So what are some areas they could focus on? For the potential solutions, what are potential cost benefits that they need to consider? And then again, is there anything that's not in the ITC that you think FASB should be focused on? So they already have stuff going on. It's not like FASB is out of things to work on by any stretch of the imagination. They currently have 25 standard setting projects, 6 research projects, 3 post-implementation reviews, and a project going on for the conceptual framework. So they're not like they're just bored, but they are trying to get some next steps. So as part of this, for the consultation process, as I mentioned, they sought input from what they already have available, their advisory groups and committees. So they talked to the Investor Advisory Committee, they talked to the FASAC, Financial Accounting Standards Advisory Council, they talked to EITF, I mentioned they talked to us at NAC, the Private Company Council, and the Small Business Advisory Group. And they asked for our opinions. And so that was sort of the jumping off point. Based on that, they were trying to identify those priority areas. And they came back and they had what they consider to be 4 areas for focus, which each become their own separate chapter. So chapter 1 is on disaggregation of financial reporting information. So trying to get into more granularity in the financial statements. These are primarily users who are looking for more information for these investors to understand how they should make their decisions and behavior. So taking current standards and getting more granular. That's one area of focus. Another one are we call emerging areas. And so this is looking at specifically how to reduce diversity in practice in areas that may not currently have any guidance, or if there isn't, if there's certain lack of clarity in the codification, or areas that are not intuitive, they want to focus on those. Then existing gap, again, where there's unnecessary cost and complexity. So how can we make things a little bit more streamlined in chapter 3? And then in part of chapter 4, which I thought was really interesting, was how to make enhancements to an education on FASB's standard setting process. How do we inform people about the cost benefit that they're doing, about how they go about making their agenda? And so I thought that was pretty interesting. Now remember, FASB already has things on their agenda, right? They already have critical projects that they're working on. So again, when we look at this, they already have guidance that they're working on segment reporting, subsequent events disclosures, disclosures about supply chain financing, accounting for asset acquisitions and business combinations. All those are already on the docket, and they're going to continue working on those. They also are looking at time-sensitive stakeholder concerns. So obviously COVID-19, that got a big priority in 2020 when they wanted to provide additional guidance and some of the staff Q&As that came out there. And then monitoring, right? So they're looking at some of these recently completed projects, so credit losses, revenue, leases, to try to ensure. So they already have stuff that they're working on. So in Chapter 1, this is probably the most diverse area, which is investors looking at more granularity and disaggregation. And they want more information about cost of sales and how we break it down for selling, general and administrative expenses by nature, labor, et cetera. So they want more detail there. Income tax information specifically about global tax risk, GILTI, BEAT, et cetera. Operating results by jurisdiction and geographical information. Intermediate measuring for operations for nonprofits. Again, that's been a hot topic. That actually was in the proposal for ASU 2016-14. We just didn't end up with it. They ended up going into a disaggregation focus and a performance measures, and it kind of has lost its direction. And so that seems to be popular. Define subtotals for operating income. So again, very similar to what they're talking about for nonprofits. Business combinations on pre and post acquisition to be able to do more comparisons about what is organic versus purchased. Foreign currency in particular here, non-controlling interest, and research and development. So for business combinations, again, a lot of times investors are saying they can't tell what's organic growth versus acquired growth. So they're looking at, providing a little bit more disaggregation, business combination disclosures, reconciliation from pre-acquisition book to acquisition fair value, and just trying to provide investors with a little bit more information. ESG, obviously a hot topic right now. It's kind of one of those things where it's difficult because investors want more. They want more about climate risk. They want to know how that would impact fair value or impact credit loss. On the other hand, people said it's hard to differentiate whether it's truly ESG, has a direct or indirect effect, and how do you determine what's material to the financial statements? And so they're getting feedback both ways. Yes, we want it. No, it's not possible. So they're looking for a little bit more information between the users and the investors and the providers. Income taxes is something they've been working on for quite some time. It doesn't seem to ever be enough for investors. They want more information about global tax risk, GILTI, BEAT, all of these types of items to better understand potential changes in tax legislation and how could that impact them. Global tax risk. Obviously, the G20 just met and they were all talking about this. And so users are obviously kind of concerned about what the impact would be for some of these changes in terms of the cash paid by jurisdiction or disaggregation of the types of taxes that are being paid. And then some other topics that they're looking into: partially owned subsidiaries and equity method, performance reporting, and presentation of the statement of cash flows. Again, when we talk about emerging areas, what is a derivative? Again, that's a hot topic as we move forward. Digital assets, cryptocurrency, blockchain. We talked about ESG related items, renewable energy, non-GAAP metrics. We continue to see a lot of public companies use non-GAAP metrics. So what does that look like? Intangible assets, as well as recognition and measurement of government grants. Obviously, this is a hot topic. They have already approved, it's not been issued yet, but approved an ASU related to grant disclosures, government assistance disclosures. But for recognition and measurement, they were scoped out explicitly of ASU 2018-08. And so people are looking for a little bit more guidance here. We can analogize that, but there are a lot of different grants that for-profit entities receive that are different, and whether we would want them in the scope of 2018-08 or not. So people are looking for a little bit more detail there. In terms of Chapter 3, again, specific areas of GAAP that are kind of expensive to, cost and complexity. Balance sheet classification, again, they actually just ditched that project. It's been on the agenda forever. They did multiple rounds of exposure draft. No one was ever happy. They got a lot of mixed feedback, so they're putting it back out there for agenda consultation. Consolidation continuously, especially VIE analysis in particular. Debt modification, obviously with COVID, I think this has kind of risen to the top there. Liabilities from equity, again, this is one that they have been working on. They've made some pretty good improvements here, so it's interesting to see that. And then materiality, this is something that's kind of interesting. FASB actually just re-proposed a new exposure draft for their notes. They had put it out for comment in 2020. They took that feedback, they made some additional edits, and they just re-proposed it. So it's a revised exposure draft. And it does address what they consider to be essential. They don't specifically talk about materiality. They talk about essentiality. But again, a lot of people want to know, when does something become material? When do we need to disclose it? And then in chapter 4, again, those enhancements in education items. So how to make the COD a little bit easier to navigate. For those of us who are in it all the time, it has its pros and cons. Developing a more more transparent and thorough cost benefit analysis. They do put them in the basis for their basis sections there for their inside of the ASU. Like they write the ASU, and at the end they give all of their rationale and if there were dissenting opinions. I don't know how many people read the basis, but the basis is usually the best part of the ASU, and that's where the cost benefit analysis currently is. Again, I think people don't necessarily know it's out there. A new way to respond to things that don't necessarily, impact the COD, but more like maybe FASB's Q&As that they do, implementation guides. Maybe that's an option there. And then transition. This is something I think a lot of people would be interested in. We're not very consistent in the language that we used for transition, and so maybe kind of coming up with a more standardized approach here. All right, so this is a little bit of a longer update, but again, it's a really interesting one. If you've ever had this desire to make a difference in what's going on at the FASB, what they should be working on, this is your opportunity. Give them a comment letter, let them know what should be next, what should not be next, what do you think on that list might not be a good area for focus, or what you do think they need to focus on, or if they missed something. They're always welcome. They always are, asking questions and really are looking for diverse feedback. So big, small, public, private, nonprofit, they want to hear from you. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Hope to see you on a future blog. Have a great day, guys. Bye-bye.